What happens when two people, born into the same country during the same century, choose completely opposite paths? One toward understanding the mind, the other toward escaping the law. One rewrote psychology, the other rewrote headlines. This isn't fiction, it's history, told through crime, science, and human survival. Welcome to the story of George Kelly and Ma Barker. This is where intellect meets infamy. This is Red Dossier.
Before we move on to the next part, please give me a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening.
In 1935, gunfire broke the silence in Ocklawaha, Florida. The FBI had tracked down a safe house used by the infamous Barker Carpus gang. After a 4-hour shootout, 2 bodies were found inside. One of them belonged to Arizona Donnie Ma Barker, a woman the press and the FBI had called the most dangerous criminal matriarch in America. That same year, far from gunfire and wanted posters, a psychologist named George Kelly was finalizing a theory in a quiet university office in Ohio. He wasn't hiding from the law. He was creating ideas that would quietly transform the way we understand human behavior. 2 people, 2 lives. One turned to science to explain how we see the world. The other walked into history as a symbol of lawlessness, family loyalty, and myth. George Kelly and Kate Ma Barker, opposite ends of the American experience during one of the country's most unstable decades. George Kelly was born on April 28, 1905, in Kansas. He was the only child of strict Protestant parents who made their living as farmers. Because his family moved often, Kelly's early education was interrupted. He spent much of his childhood reading alone and reflecting on the people and places around him. Later, he studied at Friends University and Park College. He earned a degree in physics and mathematics, then completed a master's degree in sociology at the University of Kansas. Eventually, he earned his PhD in psychology. The impact of World War II and the post-war years deeply influenced his work. Kelly believed that psychological theories needed to help people make sense of uncertainty, fear, and change. His ideas would focus on how individuals build internal models to understand their world. Arizona Donnie Clark, later known as Ma Barker, was born on October 8, 1873, in Ash Grove, Missouri. She grew up in poverty. In 1892, she married George Barker and gave birth to 4 sons: Herman, Lloyd, Arthur, and Fred. Around 1910, the Barker family moved to Oklahoma. As her sons grew older, they began getting involved in crime. After her husband left, Barker became the head of the family. She supported her sons emotionally and eventually helped them stay hidden from the law. The Great Depression hit the United States hard in the 1930s. Banks failed. Millions lost their jobs. In this broken economy, criminal gangs like the Barker Carpus Group found new opportunities. Weak law enforcement and public anger at financial institutions made it easier for crime to grow. Barker's life and her son's crimes became part of this larger national crisis. George Kelly was known for his independent thinking and creative mind. He believed that each individual has a unique way of understanding the world. In his theory, psychology should not simply label or diagnose people, but instead explore how they build personal meanings through their own experiences. Kelly's philosophical outlook emphasized that people are capable of defining themselves. He didn't see humans as passive beings shaped only by their past. He saw them as active thinkers, constantly testing and adjusting their understanding of reality. He viewed people as scientists in their own lives. They form ideas about how the world works, test those ideas through their action, and adjust when needed. This made his theory different from many of his time. Instead of asking what caused behavior, he asked how the person made sense of it. Kate Barker, on the other hand, was often described as a powerful, controlling mother figure. In press reports, she was portrayed as cold and ruthless, someone who orchestrated crimes from behind the scenes. However, not everyone agrees with that image. Alvin Karpus, a key member of the Barker-Karpus gang, once claimed she was more of a housekeeper than a mastermind. He said she didn't plan the crimes, but she stayed close and made the day-to-day operations easier for the gang. Even if she wasn't the leader the FBI made her out to be, she was strong, decisive, and fiercely loyal to her sons. Some believed she joined them out of love and survival, not evil. Still, she supported them through years of criminal activity, offering money, shelter, and emotional strength. Her psychology seemed shaped by a need for control in a chaotic world, and by a belief that family came before everything else, even the law. George Kelly approached human behavior like a scientist approaches a question. He developed personal construct theory, a psychological model based on how individuals build internal categories to interpret the world. These mental categories, or constructs, guide how people understand themselves and others. If a person's constructs no longer match reality, stress and confusion can result. To help people improve their mental flexibility, Kelly created tools like the repertory grid test. This allowed psychologists to explore how someone compared people in their life, identifying hidden thought patterns and emotional conflicts. He also created fixed-role therapy, a technique where a patient temporarily acts like another version of themselves. For example, a shy person might live for 2 weeks as someone confident and outgoing. The idea was to help people see that their personality wasn't fixed. It was chosen. They could try new roles, new ways of thinking, and discover new possibilities. His methods were structured, respectful, and centered around growth. Kelly didn't try to control behavior. He tried to understand it and help others understand it too. Kate Barker's methods were much less theoretical. She operated in a world of secrets, guns, and constant movement. Her role in the Barker-Karpus gang was to support her sons by keeping them hidden and organized. She rented houses using fake names like Mrs. Hunter or Mrs. Anderson. She managed cash, bought supplies, and acted as a trusted adult figure in a gang of dangerous young men. There is debate about whether she truly led the gang. While newspapers called her the brains behind the crimes, some insiders claimed she wasn't involved in planning. Still, it is clear that she was present during major operations, including kidnappings and robberies. Her job was not to pull the trigger, but to make sure that the people who did had everything they needed. The gang earned millions, and Barker was always nearby. During the same period, many criminal figures rose to power in America. Al Capone ruled Chicago with a combination of violence, bribes, and political control. His operations focused on alcohol smuggling during Prohibition, and his public image was carefully managed. He wore suits, posed for photos, and even gave interviews to the press. Kate Barker's style was different. She and her sons targeted smaller banks in rural towns, places where police presence was weak and escape routes were easier to manage. They didn't rely on politicians or bribery. Instead, they relied on speed, secrecy, and brutality. The Barker Carpus gang kidnapped wealthy businessmen, demanded large ransoms, and killed anyone who got in their way. Unlike Capone, who had a clear command structure and a public face, Barker's group was more unpredictable. Their strength came from being hard to trace. Kelly, by contrast, stood apart from famous psychologists of his time, like Sigmund Freud or Carl Jung. While Freud focused on childhood trauma and unconscious drives, Kelly focused on conscious thought and personal meaning. Where Jung saw universal archetypes, Kelly saw individual perspectives. His theory didn't try to fit everyone into a single model. Instead, it offered tools to understand how people think differently and why that matters. Kelly worked in classrooms and therapy rooms. Barker worked in hiding places and stolen cars. But both, in their own way, were responding to the same unstable America, a country shaken by depression, war, and uncertainty. George Kelly was driven by a desire to understand how people make sense of their world. He believed that individuals don't simply react to events. Instead, they interpret them through mental patterns that they themselves construct. His entire theory reflected a deep respect for the power of human thought. People, in Kelly's view, were not victims of their past, but creators of their present and future. He believed that if someone could change the way they interpreted life, they could also change their behavior and emotional state. He saw the mind as flexible. When someone is stuck in anxiety or depression, it might be because they are using outdated or rigid mental models. His job as a psychologist was not to diagnose and label, but to help people rework their internal structures. That way, they could adapt better, solve problems, and live more freely. For Kate Barker, motivation likely came from a different place. Her life had been shaped by poverty, abandonment, and a nation falling apart. After her husband left, she was left to raise 4 boys on her own, in a time when opportunities for women were few. As her sons drifted into crime, she did not turn away. Whether out of love, fear, or ambition, she followed them. Some believe she was motivated by money and power. Others think her main goal was to protect her children. even if that meant supporting their crimes. Either way, she stayed involved. She helped plan logistics, manage the household while the gang moved from place to place, and remained a trusted figure. Her decisions reflected someone who had chosen survival over morality and loyalty over law. Kelly published his major work, The Psychology of Personal Constructs, in 1955. In it, he laid out his theory in detail, including the fundamental postulate and 11 corollaries that explained how people build and revise their internal models of the world. His repertory grid test became a widely used tool in clinical psychology, education, and even marketing. Therapists used it to uncover hidden beliefs. Businesses used it to understand how consumers made decisions. His approach offered not just a theory, but practical tools that people could apply in real life. Over time, his work influenced many other fields. Cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, shares some of Kelly's ideas about thought patterns and behavior change. He also inspired approaches that emphasize personal meaning and subjective experience, such as humanistic and existential psychology. Kate Barker's achievements were criminal, but no less impactful. Between 1931 and 1935, the Barker-Karpus gang pulled off at least 10 bank robberies, 2 high-profile kidnappings, and several murders. The gang earned over $3 million, the equivalent of more than $60 million today. At least a dozen police officers and federal agents were killed in the process. Barker was present during much of this, offering shelter, planning routes, and keeping her sons organized and supplied. To the FBI, she was one of the most dangerous people in the country. To her family, she was the center of their world, someone who kept them together as everything around them collapsed. Her actions left deep scars, victims who never recovered, families destroyed, and a growing fear of organized crime in rural America. George Kelly never faced legal trouble. His work was respected by colleagues and supported by academic institutions. He became the head of clinical psychology programs and served as president of major divisions in the American Psychological Association. He traveled, taught internationally, and lived a full professional life. His theory received criticism for being difficult to measure and lacking emotional depth, but his reputation remained strong. Kate Barker's legal outcome was fatal. On January 16, 1935, FBI agents surrounded a house in Ocklawaha, Florida, where she was hiding with her son, Fred. The operation was based on clues found in letters and a map belonging to her other son, Arthur, who had been arrested days earlier. After a 4-hour gunfight, both Kate and Fred were killed. Their bodies were recovered from inside the house, riddled with bullets. The FBI presented her death as a major victory. Her body was photographed and shown to the public as proof of justice, but not everyone accepted the official story. Some believed the FBI exaggerated her role in the gang to make their success look bigger. Whether she was truly the mastermind or not, Her life ended in violence, and her family was either dead or in prison. George Kelly's legacy remains strong in the world of psychology. His theory is still taught in universities and used by therapists who help people change how they think and see themselves. Though not a household name, Kelly's influence is felt wherever people are encouraged to challenge fixed ideas, test new roles, and think independently. His work continues to inspire those who believe that understanding thought is the key to understanding behavior. Kate Barker's legacy is more complicated. She became a legend, a symbol of crime, motherhood, and myth. Her life inspired multiple films, including Ma Barker's Killer Brood in 1960 and Bloody Mama in 1970. She was portrayed as a ruthless, gun-toting mother who led her sons into violence. Later, she appeared in the 1996 film Public Enemies and was even referenced in the 1977 disco song Ma Baker by Boney M. Her image has been used in books, songs, and TV shows for decades. The truth about her life may be blurred, but the story remains powerful. Some see her as a victim of circumstance. Others see her as proof that women, too, can lead criminal empires. Her house in Ocklawaha, the place where she died, was preserved as a tourist attraction, then moved and turned into a museum. People still visit, curious to understand who she really was. George Kelly's work was not without criticism. Some psychologists argued that his theory was too subjective. They said it focused too much on thought patterns and not enough on emotions or biology. Others felt it was difficult to apply in real-world clinical settings, but these were academic disagreements, not personal failures. Kelly continued his research, taught students around the world, and remained respected until his death in 1967. He never faced scandal, arrest, or disgrace. His mistakes, if any, were intellectual, not moral or legal. For Kate Barker, the consequences were tragic and permanent. Her greatest mistake was staying loyal to a path of crime, even when it was clear that the law would never stop chasing her. Her refusal to separate herself from her sons' criminal lives led to her death in a hail of bullets. It also destroyed her family. One son was killed in the same shootout. Another was captured shortly after. The rest of the gang either died or spent decades in prison. By the time the dust settled, the Barker family was no longer a threat, only a memory, frozen in photographs and FBI reports. George Kelly is now considered one of the founding figures of modern cognitive psychology. His personal construct theory influenced not just therapy, but education, leadership training, and business consulting. The tools he developed, like the repertory grid test, are still used today in both research and practice. His belief in the power of personal meaning continues to shape how we understand identity and change. He helped move psychology away from viewing people as passive victims and towards seeing them as active agents of their own lives. Kate Barker left behind a different kind of legacy. She became a part of American pop culture, a character in films and stories, often exaggerated, but always fascinating. Her name is now associated with the idea of the criminal mother, someone who defies the traditional image of a nurturing caregiver. Her life is studied in criminology courses, not as a role model, but as a warning. She shows what can happen when loyalty turns into blind support and when family becomes more important than justice. George Kelly was a scholar. Kate Barker was an outlaw. One searched for insight. The other survived through instinct. Kelly worked with ideas, building theories and tools to help others. Barker worked in shadows, hiding her family, moving from house to house, avoiding arrest. Kelly's style was academic and introspective. Barker's was secretive and reactive. Kelly's methods were clinical interviews, psychological tests, and therapy models. Barker's methods were forged in crime, deception, mobility, and the ability to vanish without a trace. Kelly influenced the minds of students, therapists, and researchers. Barker influenced law enforcement strategy, public fear, and media narratives. One lived a full life, respected and remembered in universities around the world. The other died violently, remembered in movies and songs, her real story still debated to this day. Can a theory like Kelly's explain someone like Barker? Can it make sense of why a mother would choose crime over safety, or why she would follow her sons to the edge of destruction? Kelly believed that people build their own meanings to survive. Perhaps in her own way, Barker did exactly that. And what does her story tell us about society, about the myths we create, the people we punish, and the ones we glorify? Why do we remember Barker in movies, but not Kelly in classrooms? Why do we retell stories of violence louder than those of understanding? One built a theory to explain the mind. The other became a symbol of what happens when fear, loyalty, and desperation collide. Their stories never touched, but they both hold a mirror to human nature, to what we build and what we destroy when faced with a world we cannot control. Two names, one remembered in textbooks, the other in gunfire. One used theories to help people rebuild themselves. The other stayed loyal to a life that tore her family apart. But here's the real question. Who had the greater impact on society? The mind who quietly changed therapy, or the woman who became a myth through violence and fear? Let us know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want more stories where psychology meets true crime. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay curious and stay sharp.